I'm pleased to say, as our first order of business for this evening, that I am honored to nominate Mr. Reese Markison to be elected to this board to fill the vacancy created last month by the resignation of Mr. Todd Bergener. Mr. Markison currently serves as on our Education Committee, and for many years has been Executive Vice President and CFO of Window to the World Communications, Inc., the parent of WTTW public television station and WFMT radio station. He has also served on the boards of the Lake Forest Library, the Gorton Community Center, Lake County Boys and Girls Club, as well as on the board of Guerin Prep High School. We look forward to Reese contributing his extensive experience in financial matters and educational program to our board and to our district. So, do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments by board members? Hearing none, we'll have the election, although I suspect, Mrs. Barrett, we should have called the roll by now. Okay, so let's take a break and call roll, and then we'll move on to the election of Mr. Markison. I'm new at this. Give me some slack here.
Mrs. Snopelin?
Here.
Mr. Mormon?
Here.
Mrs. Sorensen?
Here.
Mr. Schreiber?
Here.
Mr. Powers? Mr. Black?
Here. Okay, now that we have that procedural matter out the way, could you please call a roll call to vote on Mr. Markison?
Mr. Mormon?
Yes.
Mrs. Snopelin?
Aye.
Mrs. Sorensen?
Aye.
Mr. Schreiber?
Aye.
Mr. Powers? Mr. Black?
Aye. Okay, that brings us to a statutory requirement and an oath of office that Mr. Markison has to take. So, Reese, if you would join me over here at the podium. If I stand here, I presume I could be heard. I, Reese Markison,
I, Reese Markison,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully discharge
that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education
the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education
of Lake Forest High School District Number 115
of Lake Forest High School District Number 115
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the laws of the State of Illinois,
and the laws of the State of Illinois,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
I further swear that
I further swear that
I shall respect taxpayers' interests
I shall respect taxpayer interests
by serving as a faithful protector
by serving as a faithful protector
of the school district's assets.
of the school district's assets.
I shall encourage and respect
I shall encourage and respect
the free expression of opinion
the free expression of opinion
by my fellow board members
by my fellow board members
and others who seek a hearing before the board,
and others who seek a hearing before the board,
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall recognize that a board member
I shall recognize that a board member
has no legal authority as an individual,
has no legal authority as an individual,
and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote
and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote
at a public board meeting.
at a public board meeting.
And I shall abide
And I shall abide
by majority decisions of the board
by majority decisions of the board
while retaining the right to seek changes
while retaining the right to seek changes
in such decisions
in such decisions
through ethical and constructive channels.
through ethical and constructive channels.
And then if you would execute that. And then let me be the first to congratulate you.
Thank you, Dick. Appreciate it.
Fellow board members, a few other matters in the President's report. I have given each of you a new listing of committee assignments for this board, and I'll just cover the major ones. Nikki Snoblin will continue as chair of the Education Committee with Ann Sorensen and Reese Markerson remaining with her, coincidentally, on that committee. Since Reese has been a community member, he now steps up as a board member representative, and we will be seeking to appoint a new community member here shortly. John Powers will become chair of the Finance and Operations Committee and will be joined by Ted Moorman and Dave Schreiber on that committee. Myself and Dave Schreiber will be the representatives to the Joint Shared Services Committee with District 67. Nikki and I will serve on the Tri-District Committee, Districts 65, 67, and 115. Ted Moorman will become chair of the Policy Committee and will be joined by Ann and Reese on that committee. And administrative liaisons will remain largely unchanged with some few minor changes. So if anyone has any comments about any of these assignments, please feel free to talk to me, but I think I've talked to most of you in some detail about them, and I hope this meets everyone's needs. Lastly, I have asked Mrs. Fowler to place at your positions tonight a number of informational pieces of paper regarding upcoming conferences, which are important, I think. The IASB Lake Division fall meeting is October 30th. I would highly encourage anyone who can to attend that meeting. Unfortunately, I'm out of town, but particularly for those of you who will be continuing on beyond elections this April, I think it's highly beneficial to establish relationships not only with the IASB staff, but with other board members from surrounding districts in Lake County. Our primary external legal firm, Franzik and Rattale, hosts an annual school law seminar. That's coming up this Wednesday, October 29th, from 4 till 7 p.m. It's highly informative. You get a very detailed and all-encompassing binder full of information on board service, primarily addressing legal issues, but also more general issues associated with board service. And again, for those of you who can attend, I would highly recommend it. Lastly, the annual joint conference of the Illinois Association of School Boards, the Illinois Superintendents Association, and the Illinois Association of School Business Officials will be held as customary the Friday before Thanksgiving week. This year, that's November 21st in downtown Chicago. There are a number of excellent training programs offered at this joint conference, some half-day sessions, some full-day sessions. And again, for newer board members, I would highly encourage you to attend and to select which sessions you might be most interested in learning from, because they do tend to fill up relatively quickly. I know it's during the workday, but again, it's highly beneficial. It only comes around once a year. You get formal credit for this training that carries on throughout your board service. You have an opportunity to become a master school board member, and again, I would highly encourage your consideration. And that's it for the superintendent's report. Excuse me, for the president's report. Superintendent Simic, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Black, and I would like to hand off to Mr. Rogers and our students over there.
Thank you, Superintendent Simic. I'm going to defer right now to our Student Council President, Vice President, Luke and Lena, as they have another important meeting to attend at 7:30.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. We wanted to talk a little bit about homecoming. As you know, that was our last big event at our high school. And the goal was to raise awareness and get people pumped up for homecoming this year, because in the past it's not been a very successful dance or event in all, profit-wise and just school spirit-wise. So In all, we raised $14,000, $4,500 of which is going to be given to Greenwood Elementary, which is the school that we decided to donate to. This can be compared to last year, which was a $4,500 profit, and we only had about 300 to 400 students last year. And this year we sold 902 tickets pre-saled, and also sold tickets at the door, so the number was closer to 1,000 students at the dance.
We also sold the homecoming t-shirts, which we made a $900 profit on, which hasn't been done, they say, in at least 8 or so years. So huge profit on those, and they were also sold out. So it's another great exciting news about homecoming. Like we said last meeting, the pep rally was moved 1 week before the homecoming dance, just to kind of get people excited, get the whole school excited, and at the same time get the community excited with window painting, which you guys probably saw driving around town and all over Lake Forest, Lake Bluff. So those both went very well, and this is also a great year to have kind of a big change with the formal dance, but it also gave us a lot of new ideas about what we want to do for next year, maybe new DJ, new music, kind of just how the dance is laid out, maybe change some things. So it's a great, really successful year. We're really excited about it.
Also, October 24th through the 26th is an event run by the swim team called Spooktacular, and they confronted us this year and asked that if we would find volunteers for them for all of those dates. They needed 16 volunteers for every session, 3 sessions per day, and they agreed to donate a portion of their profit to our fund at Greenwood as well. And what Greenwood hopes to do is to rebuild their library and paint the walls inside their school, and also rebuild portions of the playground that they've been hoping to do for a while. Are you going to talk about Student Advisory Board, or do you want me to say it quick? Okay, so another thing the Student Council is getting involved with was something called Student Advisory Board, which is run by Mr. Rogers and Mr. Sullivan. It was a group that what they hope to do is get student volunteers to help find where they want to put the grant money into our school and see what problems are happening around the school and how we can fix that. And Student Council, once again, was confronted to see if we could get members to put onto that board as well. So.
They have had student advisory boards in the past. I believe it was run by Mrs. Knight before, but this year, Student Council, we're starting to get a little bit more involved. Things are changing, so we're excited about that as well.
I think that's all we have, so thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and heartiest congratulations on the success of the homecoming dance. It's quite a turnaround, I know, from my own children. There was a period of time when it just wasn't considered cool to go to the homecoming dance. That's great. That's great. Thank you all for coming.
So I think the homecoming dance, as you heard, the numbers doubled this year, and I think it's really a conscientious effort of Student Council to really demonstrate their role as leaders in the school, to move beyond kind of just the standard fare and say, how can we make the school better? You heard things about the advisory board, just another effort to get their fingerprints on the school and to make an impact and make a difference. And part of our role as school leaders is to help develop student leaders, and so we're really excited about it, and as you can see, we've got great students here, so really excited about things that are happening. A couple things they didn't mention too was some of the others. The pep rally was fantastic, but also I think there was a buzz about town. I think more of the windows were painted. There was a great energy throughout the whole town of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff. So for the principal's report, I want to just mention some of the happenings at the school. Tomorrow, we are doing a practice ACT for all of our students. So this is something that we're opting to do, giving our students additional experience. ACT still is the main driver in terms of college admissions. Some of our students will be taking the PSAT, which will also help them as they go and look for merit scholarships. Our freshmen will be participating in a special activity on digital citizenship. We'll also have a club fair, and we'll have a special speaker on cyberbullying and, again, being a good citizen in the digital world. So that's tomorrow. We're pretty excited. That's a big day for us. I also want to invite people on the Parent Conference Night on November 6th. We're going to be opening our Innovation Incubator to the public. So in the evening of November 6th, we'd like to invite all of the parents to stop by and see the great happenings at the Innovation Incubator. We have a great play that's being put on this week. Our students have been hard at work, and our teachers have been hard at work. We're not doing Shakespeare's As You Like It, but we're doing Karate's As You Like It, or Curate As You Like It. I'm not sure, but it's a different production, and it's a production about a group of individuals who want to put on the play As You Like It, but they didn't have enough players. Well, ironically enough, that's what happened. They were a few players short, and they found out about this other play, and so they pivoted in the middle of the production, which I think shows a lot of ingenuity and creativity, and I think they went at it twice as hard. So I think we're going to see a great production, so invite everybody out. It starts at the 16th at 7 p.m. We also have performances on Saturday the 18th at 2 p.m. and at 7 p.m. I want to talk a little bit about how we've been using our late starts. So we've had several late starts, and we're hoping to front load those late starts in the first half of this year. We've been using that late start time to do the valuable work of the visible curriculum. So as part of our initiative and part of our strategic plan, we talk about how do we make our curriculum visible. Part of John Hattie's work talks about you can really move the needle in terms of achievement, in terms of wellness, if you have teachers working together and doing productive things. So the conversations, I can confidently say, have been great this year. Conversations focusing around teaching and learning and how can we make the student experience that much better. Update on enrollment numbers. Right now, at the October 1st deadline, we were at 1675. Just as a comparison, we're at 1674 last year. We have 13 outplaced students. Next year, in the next couple of years, I think, and we'll go over our enrollment projections at a later time, we think we're going to be relatively stable. There might be a slight bump up, and then maybe a slight bump down, but for the next few years at least, we should be in this ballpark. We are interviewing for a social studies instructional director, and so we're starting that process on Thursday, and we've got some strong internal candidates, but we'll also be looking outside the building to make sure that we get the best person to replace Dr. Gant. I want to say a word about the rankings. A lot of times the rankings is very exciting news. It comes up at different events and evening events and different things like that. So we've got, first of all, some really good news to report. Newsweek magazine had listed Lake Forest High School number 12 nationally and number 2 in the state. This is our highest ranking ever. But what I'd like to do is kind of put that into context. So I think, first of all, that the rankings for Newsweek is based basically on college enrollment and graduation rate. Those are the two strongest metrics involved. They also look at the AP and IB composite, SAT, ACT composite. So starting off with the great news. I also want to touch on a couple other rankings, which also gives a composite picture of the school. And I think it's important when we're looking at any of these rankings to see none of them as the answer or the one solution. We went through a pretty meaningful strategic planning process, and we pointed out certain things that were important in our community. And so those things, I think, appear in some forms in all of the different rankings. So I think probably the healthiest and probably best outlook in terms of these rankings is see it as a composite picture and then find areas for growth. So with Newsweek, I think doing extremely, extremely well, which is saying, hey, our kids are graduating in 4 years, we're retaining our kids, and they're going to a great 4-year college. They're also doing well on the standardized tests. U.S. News and World Report is a different story. So when we look at Lake Forest, we go from number 12 nationally to number 578 nationally, to show you that it's not the same thing. And then number 24 in the state. What U.S. News and World Report is primarily looking at is AP participation rate and how well students do on AP participation. And so one of the things that we did learn about ourselves through the strategic planning process is there's an opportunity for growth here for our students to take more rigorous classes, to make sure that we're supporting students in taking those classes, and that we're offering all the classes that we can possibly do at the AP level. So I think that that's a great opportunity for us, and we're already seeing great things happening. I think in a prior meeting, we had mentioned that just our AP participation in science this year is up over 30%. And early returns also say that the kids are sticking. So not only are they challenging themselves, but they're sticking and they're doing well. There's another report, the Daily Beast, which it used to be affiliated with Newsweek. And I should say sometimes the rankings change, so the criteria can change even within these different organizations. Daily Beast used to be with Newsweek. In that ranking, we're number 56 nationally and number 2 in state. And they look at mostly graduation, college acceptance rates. But that's also, I think, a little bit problematic. They're missing a number of notable schools in that one. Chicago Sun-Times, Chicago Tribune, I think are also very important. Chicago Sun-Times, I think probably does a little bit of the better job because they actually look at the scale score. So they look at how our students do on the Prairie State of Achievement Test or the ACT, right? I think they're interchangeable. And so we were number 9 in the state, which I think is a very strong ranking. Unfortunately, that test is being retired, so going forward, they're going to have to come up with a different methodology. So as you can see, Newsweek just changed their methodology this year. Sun-Times is probably going to have to change their methodology as well. But I think it's a good statistical method they're using in terms of standardizing to basically look at how well your average student is compared to the rest of the state. Chicago Tribune, they've historically used a percentage of students meeting state standards, which is something quite different. So they have a threshold for how many students meet standards, how many get up to that meets level, and they just count it. I think it's a little bit less sophisticated measure. They've actually backed off from actually assigning a number ranking this year. They do link you to the school report card, so that's what's going on with the Chicago Tribune. Chicago Magazine, and last but certainly not least, we all like Chicago Magazine. And again, I think as part of a composite picture. One of the main drivers there is spending per pupil. So board members, if you'd like to increase your ranking, double down on how much money you spend in school. We're number 2 in Lake County. Obviously, there's a strong commitment from the Board of Education, from this community towards education. We do very well. They also do factor in the ACT composite. So again, taking all of these things into account, I think it does paint a very good picture of what's happening here at Lake Forest, but also provide some opportunities for growth. Okay, and I think okay, so I think that concludes my presentation here for the principal report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. I would point out, or ask you maybe to point out and further describe this difference between selective admission public schools and open enrollment admission public schools. I've heard people, and I kind of like the ring of it, that Newsweek and Daily Beast ranked us as the #1 open enrollment high school in the state of Illinois because by law we have to take all comers. So could you comment on that?
No, that's absolutely correct. So Lake Forest, being a public school, our students and the students that we receive at the school are driven by our local population. Schools in a selective enrollment, they are picking and choosing, creating some criteria, and there's different criteria for different schools, but some criteria, whether it's a gifted program, test scores, on and on. So I think it's quite a testament to our community that we'd earned the #1 ranking for those students that are non-selective enrollment. And so I think it's fair to, it's quite fair to put us even in a separate category. Yeah, so great news.
And however well our school does on whatever ranking we happen to have, it's a team project. It's the board, the administration, the parents, more than perhaps anybody other than the teachers and their contribution to raising the kids and doing really well. One of the things that anytime we talk about rankings, I always want people to know that it is very, very relative. And the reason that people do rankings is because they sell product. And not long after one of the rankings came out, I received a solicitation immediately thereafter saying, would you like to buy an engraved plate with your school's ranking on it? You'll be happy to know that for $126, our school can get a custom graphic that is sealed with a non-glare laminate mahogany finished birch to preserve the material. These are ways that by selling banners and by selling plaques, these are very substantial revenue generators for each of the ranking organizations, and that is why they do it. And it really does matter what they happen to be measuring, and it varies one outfit to the next. I want to compliment Mr. Rogers on something that is quite easily overlooked, two things quite easily overlooked, and that is the contribution to school culture and a focus on school culture. The homecoming, the more than doubling the number of students who pre-purchased tickets and then attended a dance. The reviews from the students were really, really positive on that. It really was a well-attended and very well-received event. There was, in addition to the dance, that was a formal dance, and the kids were really revved up about it, that's the best outcome you can have. The really well-attended and exciting pep rally, and then a packed game where they won. It was like perfect night, great weather ordered, and they played a great game and won on top of it. But all of that adds up to a really, really great set of experiences for our kids, and something that doesn't fit into a ranking, but that is more important to the lives of our children and our community. So great job on that, Mr. Rogers. Another thing that bears commenting as well, and I'll get to after I talk about a very important thing that happened in our community. I'd like to present some abbreviated comments from one of our high school social studies teachers. On Tuesday, September 16th, 2014, Lake Forest High School lost a distinguished teacher and administrator and great friend. Jim Gant served in many roles during his 18 years at our high school, first as a member of the Social Studies Department, and then later as its department chair. Above all else, he was a teacher, and his colleagues report that Jim was happiest when he was standing at his podium in his classroom, leaning forward, asking his students to think deeply, to understand on a deeper level, to see the complexity of the world, and to imagine their place in it. This lesson was his touchstone. It was his great gift as a teacher and the gift he gave each of his students and his colleagues. He was born in Quincy, Illinois, attended LaGrange High School, attended NMSU in Kirksville, and I have to say, I don't know what NMSU is.
Northeast Missouri State University, now known as Truman State University, and I know that because my son attended there.
All right. So he attended what is now known as Truman State University in Kirksville before he studied at Stanford. He began teaching at Boys Town in Omaha, Nebraska, the famous Boys Town in Omaha, Nebraska, and that shaped him for his entire lifetime. And he had stops along the way to Lake Forest and North Hollywood, California, and Shoreham, New York. These experiences forged the hallmark of Jim's time spent in Lake Forest, which was the combination of a deep and abiding love for academia and a commitment to his students. In the course of his time at our high school, Jim Gant gave his heart, his soul, and the depth of his wisdom to his students and his fellow teachers, and we are deeply, deeply grieved at his passing and our loss. It is nonetheless something that is wonderful to be able to say that somebody spent his life on earth doing what he enjoyed most and went out on top. And he really did leave a huge mark on our community, and he did what he was really, really good at, and he hoped to leave an impression on the world, and he did that. I'd also like to circle back to Mr. Rogers, something that will probably go otherwise unseen. The hours and hours, the many evenings that were spent on the phone with Jim's family trying to figure out how a celebration could be arranged in our community. And that community was really meaningful to our students and our staff. It was the ideal moment in time for his family to hear stories from people students in particular that knew him best, and there is no one that can talk about somebody that they cared about better than children can. And as our kids always do, they are our very best ambassadors. So they stand there and they talk about all of Jim's little quirks as a teacher, all the funny little things that he does. And one of the nice things about high school teachers is the most beloved teachers are the ones that are quirky and lovable. And all of us probably had some of those teachers, and that was what Jim represented. And the effort that went into making that possible was a team effort, but Mr. Rogers was at the head of that, so great job on that. Strategic planning, we've been working very, very hard on our strategic plan, continue to do so, and with some wise and expert counsel from Monty Edson, we have made additional improvements. And I really have to say, if you want to spend some time at the foot of the master, just call Monty, and he does consulting for small and medium-sized businesses, and that setting is something that he is so skilled at. He walks in and immediately puts you right at ease, and then you go right to work doing stuff that you're both very interested in. So very significant improvements from that, and we'll continue to roll that out in the coming weeks. One of the most important things that we'll be doing actually will be going to Croya, our administrative team. Todd Higian and the folks at Croya have arranged to have a group of middle and high school kids spend time with our team going over the various metrics. So the things that we say, this is how we intend to measure our success. And students are the most insightful and the most incisive. They cut right to the chase, and they'll tell us whether or not we have hit the mark on each of these metrics. And as a vetting group, we couldn't hope to have a better setup than that. So that will be at the end of this month. For next year, we're already planning next year. You'll be happy to hear. At the end of next summer, we have a very important author coming to visit us. We have now confirmed both with the author, Carol Dweck, and also we have a commitment on a date for her to speak both in the evening and with our collective staff. She wrote the book Mindset, and if you have not read the book yet, I strongly encourage that you do so. It will reinforce all the things you've learned over a lifetime about how many people that are not necessarily good at school wind up being very, very productive adults, and why that is. And it has much more to do with their mindset than it does with other attributes that they might have. To quote Warren Buffett, if you have an IQ of 150, you should sell 30 points. It really has a lot more to do with determination and perseverance than it does with any sort of God-given natural ability that you might have. So with that, I end the superintendent's report. Mr. Black.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simic. I would add, with regard to Mr. Edson, we are receiving his consulting services at the absolute best guaranteed price. He continues to volunteer, even though he has had to resign from the board due to moving. But we greatly appreciate all his input, and I just want the public to know he is contributing greatly and at no cost. Okay, that brings us to the time in our meeting for public participation. If there are any members in the audience who would like to address the board, please feel free to do so. Seeing none, we can move on then to reports and discussions, and I understand, Mr. Rogers, you have a presentation for us?
So presenting with me tonight will be our curriculum director, Mr. Giovanni Benincasa. So, Gio, if you want to come on up. So we're going to talk a little bit about leading edge learning, and I know we have a couple new board members, so we'll do a little bit of a quick review, which will weave into what we've done, just to tell our story. So going back to last year, we had a lot of meaningful discussions within the board, within our school, about how do we meet students where they're at. So here you see a picture of kids with their miscellaneous 21st century digital devices, which they seemingly are never without. And so if if you have a kid, you know that you're reminding them to take their shoes, right? I've got a 12-year-old, hockey practice, where's your elbow pads? Where's this? Never forgets the cell phone, right? It's part of that. So part of what we wanted to do is meet kids where they're at. But we know that they're there. We know that they're immersing themselves in a digital world. Over 7 hours a day. I think the most reliable surveys say 7.5 hours a day for teenagers in front of some type of a digital device. Many times it's multiple devices at one time. But how do we use the technology in a way that's thoughtful? How do we use it for creativity and collaboration, communication, critical thinking, all of those things that we want to advance in our kids? With also a belief that we also want to position our students for success moving forward. We know that when they go off to college, when they go out into the workplace, if they're able to leverage technology in whatever field that they're in, they're going to be in a better position. So, as I mentioned, the 4 C's, I think it's very important to remember that it is not just about technology. I think we could have done that easily. I think that that's something that other schools, other organizations have done easily. It's just a matter of buying the right box, right? Buying the right technology. And it could be an iPad, it could be a Chromebook, it could be an Intel box, it could be a tablet, it could be whatever you want. But again, focusing on how this affects the learning environment and doing it in an informed and an enlightened way. So what we're seeing is it's already happening. Exciting things are happening on the ground at Lake Forest High School. We see kids working together in real time on projects. We see teachers developing exciting new lessons. Gio's going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're seeing happening. And innovation. Innovation is doing things that we couldn't possibly do before. And sometimes that's due to the tools, but sometimes the tools can change the mindset. So I want to connect this to one of our milestones of leading edge learning. Creates a dynamic, inspiring environment where technology, the facilities, and the community beyond LFHS to enhance the learning experience. And so how do we maximize that learning experience? How do we make the most of it? How do we take our precious time and make sure that students are engaged at a high level? So just as a quick review, things that we've done. I think we need to give all of ourselves some credit on this, and all of our teachers and students who've worked so hard, our parents. So just a deployment, because it's no small task. We approved the budget. We worked through the numbers. We worked with Mr. DuBose over here at repurposing some of our funds that we had, and we did it in a smart way. We put 140 teacher laptops, state-of-the-art laptops, in our teachers' hands. So it's about having the best tools in our teachers' hands to help our students. We deployed 450 yoga Chromebooks, which is the state-of-the-art Chromebook. We participated in out-of-the-box sessions with our students. So students came in during the orientation process, and they were able to basically take the device out of the box. They were able to make sure that it was up, it was running. We had also a number of parents that came along for it. We explained kind of the do's and don'ts as they work, and we're able to eliminate a lot of the kind of technical issues right from the start. So we're off to a really smooth start. Part of this initiative, too, is just making sure that we had the right infrastructure in place. And so we had a data stream upgrade where we put high-speed fiber optic, several times faster than what we currently had. And I think we'll also future-proof the initiative as we move next year to the entire class. We've increased wireless access points throughout the school to make sure that Wi-Fi access is ready to go. Because you can imagine, the teacher could have the best lesson, a student can plan to collaborate with students, but if the Wi-Fi isn't working, it's not going to work. We've updated some of the learning spaces, and so a few of the things that we've done up there. We have a yoga studio, which is named after our Chromebook Yoga, but at any time throughout the day, students and teachers can come for assistance. And the yoga studio is different from our Chrome Depot, which handles break fix, but the yoga studio really has to do with issues of teaching and learning. So if a teacher comes in and says, hey, I really want to do an activity that involves like collaboration, whether it's a blog or I want to do something, maybe they're actually using Google Plus where they can actually video conference with each other. How do we do it? And so we work with our teachers in doing that. Students who are doing a special project, I think one of the exciting things we're starting to see happen is teachers give more ownership to students. And so I've seen some activities already where the teachers are allowing students multiple pathways to demonstrate their knowledge. So they can do a traditional term paper, or they can do a multimedia presentation, or they can do some type of a skit, or they can do many different ways. They can do an infographic, lots of different things. And so they're coming up to innovation they're coming up to Yoga Studio and finding out ways to do that. We've piloted some collaborative furniture in different spaces. I'll talk about the Innovation Incubator in just a second, but in different classrooms. One of the classrooms, Mr. Dunn, who you met last year as he came and he spoke about a new program called Scholar. And as he starts to really develop his practice, he's putting all the pieces together for the 21st century classroom. And someone we might not think that rectangle tables are that exciting, but if you spoke to Mr. Dunn about it, he would tell you that it would open up a whole new world. Just having the students facing each other, right? Instead of staring at the back of the neck of the student in front of you for the next 38 weeks. Having that ability to have that face-to-face, because we know, going back to Dewey and Piaget and some of the earlier educational thinkers, that learning is done best, it's maximized when it is in a social environment. So having students have the opportunity to share their knowledge with others, help each other, challenge each other, I think it's really exciting. So we've created some different models throughout the school with the collaborative furniture, and hopefully we'll be able to replicate those as we move forward in the future. The Innovation Incubator, which I think is the grandest experiment of them all, and again, I would invite everyone to visit the Innovation Incubator on November 6th. And so that space is initially designed for our Innovation Incubator class. It's a business startup class where students actually will be developing new products, new ideas, working with mentors in the community. But part of that is creating an exciting space. So they have teaming tables with the latest technology. They have other spaces where they can actually work on their pitches. And so what we decided to do with this space is we want it to be contagious. We want this type of ingenuity and innovation to be contagious throughout the school. So while it's 3 periods a day, the teacher needs it for the Innovation Incubator business class, the other 5 periods before and after school is now open to teachers who want to try an innovative lesson, try to do something creative. And again, hopefully that's kind of like getting the blood to flow and getting exciting ideas, and it really is. And so that's happening right now at the Innovation Incubator. Okay. So we're going to segue into our next milestone, which talks about building staff capacity, engaging our staff in continuous professional development, which is timely and relevant. In order to move the needle, it's been demonstrated that the action happens in the classroom. And if we can come up with the grandest plans at the board level, at the school leadership level, but we need to be able to execute at the classroom level. And so I think this really inspired our milestone, and I'm going to turn it over to Giovanni to share his thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. When we think about changes in school culture from homecoming dance to affecting the classroom learning space, it is a shift, and one of the ways that you can motivate that shift is by providing very timely and relevant professional resources. You can imagine an environment where a faculty can get together a couple of times a year, and in those instances receive a direct one-to-many style of presentation on a professional development topic, which may or may be useful to you given the situation that you're in with your classes. In this case, we had a chance to get a head start last year, anticipating what our needs would be for this program. We began to bring some resources to the teachers that they weren't necessarily used to having. Lunch and Learns, these are just opportunities, informal gatherings. We actually decided to use them to move the needle on training for the ability to use Google Apps for Education. This is a resource that had existed within the district for some time, but are we really getting everything out of that we can? So we offered topics and did this in a sustained approach, and what it really showed us was teachers will come to the resource if we provide it for them. So rather than doing an ad hoc collection of Lunch and Learns, this is where the idea for the yoga studio really took shape. It is an ongoing, continual process. It's available for teachers before school, all throughout the day, after school, as well as being a resource for students. In this time period, familiarizing teachers with Google Apps for Education, Google has their own accreditation program where they have level 1 and level 2 certifications. And without a mandate, without necessarily driving this as a contractual issue. We had over 100 teachers go ahead and complete that basic certification training because they could feel the shift in school culture. This was being valued. As a matter of fact, we hadn't even anticipated offering the second level, and 7 of our teachers ran right through and finished level 2 certifications. It also was very revealing to us in terms of who was raising their hand, surging forward, leaning forward for the next challenge in their career. The yoga studio is staffed by 2 full-time educational technologists, and what that means is they have specialized training to be able to teach teachers to get the most out of their instructional strategies. There's a particular framework that we're using called the SAMR model. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but this is a way to review what you're doing and to look for opportunities in your practice. In the first 5 weeks of our school year, we had 297 contacts with the yoga studio, 297 contacts. As we began to look into that data, something rather amazing jumped out. It wasn't the same 5 teachers coming in over 100 times looking for help, 911 assistance. How do I make this work? It was a variety of teachers, 70 different teachers across different departments who were coming in and asking some interesting questions about how to do something as opposed to this isn't working for me, can you fix it? We also managed to have consultations with 67 different students. So we just blended the service and made it available to anyone who was interested. The student interest is also something I'll speak to in a little bit because some of our students are raising their hands. They want to get Google certified as well. Of those conversations, we crudely categorized them into 2 categories, Tech 911 or how-to calls, and what we understood was 92% of that contact time was devoted towards advancing teaching practice. And this is all happening on the fly. This is all happening as teachers are looking at the next unit and saying, what could I do differently here? This is the model that we tend to apply to our practice. And it basically shows us when we're thinking about using technology, will we just substitute paper for a word processing program, you know? Or is there a way that in making this shift, it's actually augmenting my practice, it's enabling me to do something I hadn't done before? Of course, when you start to think in this way, you start to think of your workflow, you start to think of your students' workflows, and you might modify and decide, I am not going to take a bunch of papers, disappear for a couple of weeks and grade them. Instead, I'm going to have my students working in front of me, and I'm going to be intervening immediately when they're actually working. So you may modify something. And certainly the redefinition of a task tends to be the most complex change that you would make in your class, and that's where you're looking further afield towards the future and understanding what are certain things that your students are going to need to do that aren't currently in your approach to the classroom. So here's an example, and there's lots of these. I'll try to move quickly through them. This was a social studies teacher, Ms. Flangle, who had done this project years previously. And in this particular case, she decided to give some choices in terms of the outputs instead of simply asking for a presentation or a paper. And some of these included screencasting, which allowed students to actually take a viewer, their audience, through their project, providing commentary. Minecraft, in terms of modeling actual place that was being actually being studied and providing a guided tour through that. As far as Minecraft being child's play, it's important to remember that Microsoft recently acquired them, and they have also launched a specific education product called Minecraft EDU, using Google Earth to actually take an audience through a guided tour, creating websites specifically for this project. This is a powerful tool because often a small essay is the only way a student can represent themselves for universities, for scholarships. In this way, they can purposely create specific online sites for particular purposes. And then they even experimented with offering online support in the evening as students were going through these complex tasks, making themselves available for office hours in the evening. There was an orientation activity that was done called the Amazing Race. There are links, I believe, to these in the board information that was provided. I put Amazing Races there because as soon as the Amazing Race was conducted, 3 more teachers came down and said, "Me too, I want to try this," which is fantastic. We had a Miss Nawar, who takes our students to Eloa Farms for an AP Enviro field trip, was using Google Plus as a way for, again, taking your project and opening it up to extended feedback. This is a very powerful thing. Students are very invested in their work when they're getting timely and relevant feedback to it. A teacher can do so much, but a wider community can provide a lot more, highly motivating. Infographics done on Ebola and the challenges that we face in dealing with that crisis. Again, screencasting to provide wider feedback opportunities. Through our KTI structure, we've offered a variety of courses that look at Google Apps through the lens of collaboration, critical thinking, and so forth, our program goals. In this case, for this particular collaboration, KTI, these are the different utilities that, again, weren't being used before, but teachers are really seizing upon and finding effective ways to use them in their practice. We have an amazing group of teachers that have come together. Both of our ed techs have taken on 2 leadership roles. One works with a group of departmental tech leads to really think about how we're working with technology and perhaps if we can clean up those workflows a little bit. We want to think about how we look at assessment data, how many different places we look for it, certainly calendaring or communicating with families. Back to that piece of making practice visible and so forth. So this is one group, and then the other group is a set of students who will be meeting, I believe, a week from this Saturday to earn their Google certification. Our goal is to have 10% of our freshman class just sitting in a classroom with those abilities to help either their peers or the teacher. These are the tech yogi because we enjoy good puns at Lake Forest. Here are a few resources. This is the Leading Edge Learning page, which is off of our main website, and it provides background information about the program, a nice fact, information about where to go for support, both for the boxes in the basement of the Chrome Depot or up with the users in the yoga studio. It also gives a little bit of background information on the box. I almost grabbed the wrong one. This is my nearly $2,000 IBM ThinkPad, and this is the Chromebook that we were able to find and bring many of these abilities to the students. And of course, we have to do the show in terms of the yoga and why it's such a fun pun. It's the yoga because it's flexible. It offers a few different modes for teachers to use it in class. Certainly, this is a traditional laptop mode. It can also be set up on a tabletop if you are, say, doing data analysis and working in a lab space. It can also fold down and be a full tablet. This is another one of my favorite jokes. This is conversation mode. So the teachers know that they can close them, move on to another activity, and come back and not have to wait for the technology, not have to plan the lesson around the technology, to seamlessly move between using it and doing other things. We also have a knowledge base that we've built out on a Google site, which many of those yoga conversations are so good, we decided to start capturing them with video and archiving them so that teachers who haven't made the trip down could see some of the things that were happening. This is basically where all of that information is going. Our ed techs blog, they tweet regularly pushing out information because, again, You know, it's one thing to bring people's technology abilities to a certain threshold, but you still want those forward-thinking teachers to be moving ahead, not just working with those who are a little further behind. In terms of Twitter, you're seeing a lot of information about what's really effective, state-of-the-art practices. And then, you know, last but not least, there's Twitter. So there is a video. This was provided, but maybe in the interest of brevity, we'll skip it. But you do have it as the first link in your board materials. And I guess at this point, it's a good idea for questions, if you have some.
Joe, thank you, first of all. That was terrific. Can you talk a little bit about what a Google certification does for a teacher, what we would expect out of the 7 that have been certified, what you expect out of the 10% of the students you hope to certify? And a follow-up question, somewhat related, I suppose, the SAMR, or the SAMR, is there a life cycle goal for that on a curriculum basis, or particular disciplines that we're expecting out of the science department or the math department? So I know those are 2 wide questions, but.
Sure. Well, when it comes to the actual Google certifications, Google breaks them out by the different applications. So Gmail, you also have Docs, and you also have Sites. So these different utilities, there's one devoted to the Chromebook, so they're focused on topics within those particular utilities. A user of Gmail really doesn't understand how much more there is to Gmail. And when they're able to understand different utilities that exist within it, it opens up efficiencies and workflows. So getting that first basic examination, in some ways, one of the biggest things that it does for a user is it shows them there's much more to this than met the eye. So that, again, whets the appetite for level 2 certs, and those go much deeper into those topics as well. So the first reviews basically the application for you. The second takes you much deeper into it. And also the second explicitly talks about those applications within the context of teaching, as opposed to just using calendaring for a small business purpose. In terms of the SAMR model, we're in a really great moment. There's lots of things converging on our community right now, one of which is this making of our curriculum, public and viable and guaranteed. As we're engaging in that process, it's a great moment to be rethinking the things that we've done. So we're not just merely articulating what we've been doing, we're taking that as an opportunity to refresh practice. But in terms of prescription, it is kind of a tricky thing. If you're looking for X amount of technology assignments or units, sometimes what you get is only that. What we're really seeing in terms of our teachers is they're leaning forward in a serious way. The beginning of the school year, they're establishing procedures, they're getting their classrooms up and running, and these are usual things they do from year to year. But right now is a really interesting moment because 5 weeks in, people are beginning to dabble into things that they haven't done before. So we'd like them to go much further than any mark that we would establish for them, and to their credit, they do.
Other questions, board members?
I have a compliment. One of the things that is most characteristic of any kind of tech rollout is, first, the technology doesn't work. You can't get on the expressway, if you will, can't get on the internet. Wi-Fi doesn't work, and we check that box in spades. The second thing is the tech support and the professional development isn't there. And frankly, I don't know anybody anywhere among my colleagues that can say, you know what, we can say with a straight face, our teachers are absolutely over the moon on the quality of the professional development they've gotten and the quality of the support that Mr. DuBose and others have provided. I mean, that just doesn't happen, and it's terrific that the highest anxiety moment for people that are using something new is what we've really done a bang-up job addressing and lowering that so they can really focus on the work.
I want to say thank you for this excellent report. For those of us who've been trying to comprehend this entire initiative from the time it was first proposed to us, I don't know how long ago that was, a year and a half, a couple years ago. No matter how many questions we asked and no matter how much information you gave us, there were things we had to take on faith. And for some of us, that was more difficult than others. But to see this laid out for us, the initiative's been launched. You're telling us exactly how things are going, and what's more, you're telling us how many of the teachers have really bought into this as the next phase of their professional development, and how many of them are engaging in really, really cool projects. I mean, I was going through the report you sent us with all the links and clicking through those and thinking, I would like to do this project. Who would not like to make an Epcot? You know, it certainly makes it all very concrete for us, and it's very rewarding to know that that leap of faith was not ill-judged, and you guys are really pulling this off. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Okay, that brings us to our board committee reports. Nikki, do you have a report on the Board Education Committee?
No, the Education Committee hasn't met since our last meeting. Our next scheduled meeting is Wednesday, November 4th. I'm actually going to ask our staff if we could change that, because Wednesday mornings are not the best for me. And, you know, my committee is in constant chaos because we keep sending our members to, you know, serve on the board. So
Excuse me, but the immediately preceding member came from Finance and Operations.
Oh, I suppose.
I happen to know personally.
But we trained her on education first. No, and actually the committees are, in fact, great educational opportunities for community members who feel that they may be interested in the board at some point. So I imagine Mr. Block will be talking to us about that. But in any case, we are very happy to welcome Reese Markison as our board, as one of the board members on our committee after he got in all of one meeting as a community member on our committee. We will have a vacancy for a community member, but in any case, I guess that was a really long way of saying we haven't met, and hopefully our next meeting will be sometime early in November, but we'll get in touch with all the committee members. Thanks.
I'll cover the Finance and Operations Committee since John isn't here, and I was chairman up until, I guess, this evening when I announced that I was no longer chairman. The Finance and Operations Committee also has not met. We had a meeting scheduled, but due to illness of a key presenter of some materials, we decided to cancel/postpone that meeting. And so we have a meeting set for October 22nd at 7:30 a.m. at East Campus. We always meet at East Campus now. And I would invite any board members not on the committee who have an interest, and any members of the public to please come. One of the two main agenda items is a discussion of the athletic budget, how it's put together, how dollars are spent by sport, and it boils it all the way down to spending per student participant by each sport, netting out our extracurricular activity fees as well. So quite detailed, and the board has, the board members of the Finance and Operations Committee have set as a goal for this year to educate ourselves on the extracurricular activities of the district as a whole, and starting with athletics. And so this will be our kickoff meeting in that regard. And then the second main agenda item will be a discussion of our 5-year budget and our annual tentative tax levy, and how those two things mesh, where we forecast we are and what the risk factors are associated with our reserve fund balances, and where does that lead us preliminarily in terms of a tentative tax levy. So both very important topics, and again, I would encourage attendance from any who can come, board members or community members. That then moves us on to liaison reports. I suspect that Mr. Moorman has a short report on NSSED.
That is correct. Yeah, the North Suburban Special Ed District, we met last Wednesday
It's composed of 18 member districts. We still have one district who still intends to pull out after the 14-15 school year. That's District 125, Glenbrook. And one of their complaints was they felt they could do it better in-house, and they felt the cost structure was somewhat onerous. So there have been quite a few efforts recently to improve the cost structure, make it better serving the districts, better serving the students. And it looks like under the new structure that's going to be rolled out shortly, District 115 is a slight winner. Our tuition fees will be going down about $6,500. And third, right now, NSSCD is on a really good fitting as far as facilities, programming, and it's a good time for the superintendent to announce his retirement, and he'll be retiring after the 15-16 school year. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Ted. Any other liaison reports, Ed Red or others?
Yeah, just a short note on EdRed. There are a number of legislative activities going on right now, and one of the asks from the EdRed organization is that we make sure that our voice is heard by our representatives in the state and the House. And on the short list of those bills is the School Funding Reform Act, and there is some real potential impact to us from a funding perspective. And Alan knows this probably way better than I, but it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's something that we need to make our voice heard. And I think that getting something to come from maybe the superintendent or the president real clear on our position there would be timely, and that's the ask from that organization. They're also well, that's the short of it. Yeah.
Dave, I've heard that well, different people have different opinions about how likely that bill is to move. And I've heard that the Senate sponsor of the bill has said that it was intended to be a conversation starter and not a finished work. Does EdRed have an opinion on the likelihood of it moving forward, or are they just trying to be prepared for the worst? What's their situation?
I think they're trying to be prepared for the worst. They're actually also not taking an official position on Senate Bill 16, but they are strongly recommending that we make sure our position is made clear. There are a number of I've heard that as well, about it being a conversation starter, but some of the gotchas in there, for instance, are that it doesn't give us, if this did pass, we wouldn't get any additional relief from some of the unfunded mandates. So I don't know. It's something maybe we need to have a discussion about and make sure our voices are heard.
So if it's a conversation starter, we should be part of the conversation.
I've got two meetings, one with Representative Drury and another one with Senator Minar in the next week, and I'll be letting you guys know what came out of those.
And Mr. Simic and Mr. Albus, if we can count on you to guide us in that regard, it would be most appreciated. We do want to participate. My understanding is that the background here has just been sort of simmering, coming to a boil for quite a few years now, and it's fundamentally an effort to redistribute property tax revenues between richer districts and poorer districts, and certainly we're vulnerable in that regard in terms of losing revenue and not picking up other sources. So we count on your guidance and would appreciate your timely input. Any other liaison reports? Okay, let's move on to action items, sort of the core activity of the board meeting. The first action item is approval of the 2015-16 school calendar. And Mr. Simic?
Thank you, Mr. Black, and I will hand us over to Mr. Rogers to talk about the calendar and anyone else that may want to chime in.
Sure. We attached the calendar to the board packet. I do want to highlight just some of the elements of the calendar. And first I want to say that the calendar came about after some good discussions with our parent groups and also with, also with members of our LFEA calendar team. And so looking at trying to find the right type of balance, the right start date, we went back and forth about in terms of when we would start school. And again, got some good feedback. One of the things that was very important to realize that what's best for families in all of our communities. So we actually met with Jean Sophie from Lake Bluff School District, as well as we had internal conversations with Lauren Fagel, our superintendent of curriculum and instruction here in both districts, to make sure that the calendar worked for it. So we basically took all of the draft calendars and tried to create as much similarity as possible. Now it is impossible to actually have identical calendars, and I don't even know if that's desirable. Sometimes it's nice to have one off and one back at home, especially as you're getting started. The reason being is that there's actually a different number of contractual dates for all three of the districts. So one district might have an extra school day, one might have an extra professional development day. But I think in the end, we tried to create as much similarity again and continuity for all of our families. And so we're going to be starting off with 2 professional development days. One of the days is going to work out perfectly, will be our day with Carol Dweck. And so we're very excited about that. We've, in terms of days off, we try to, as much as possible, have continuous weeks and not break them up too much, and kind of, when we have days off, make sure that they make sense. So you'll see a day off, for instance, on the 6th of November after a parent night, and it works out best for teachers. We actually have an extra day after our spring vacation for travel. Found that a lot of families found that to be very valuable. We've done that in the past. I think in terms of the end of the year, we wanted to make sure that we didn't end up with one exam day, for instance. So we spaced it out so that we had a final exam week, if you will. And barring the unprecedented snow that we had this year, we'll be out, we think, by June 2nd, which we think that would be a great day to finish up the year, following with our graduation on the 4th. And so be more than happy to entertain any types of questions. But it is fairly similar to the calendars we've had in the past. And I guess the last thing I would say is that through the process of looking at it in different ways, it has started to, I think, elevate the conversation. And actually, the conversation even went back to some of the things we've talked about in terms of strategic planning. And started to get into questions of assessment. What types of assessments are we giving? Why are we giving them? How are we creating balance in students' lives? So I think it's going to drive good conversations. And the committee actually pledged to meet again in February and March of this year to see if they can brainstorm some even better ideas for the following year. So.
Did you check with the Farmer's Almanac on that?
So the farmers are saying this year it's going to be cold and snowy. We're hoping they're wrong, but next year things are going to be much better. So, and so, we used that, right, Lauren, when we were actually, exactly. So I should say we had the three calendars out and the Farmer's Almanac when we actually did the calendar.
Well, I know it doesn't appear that way on the surface, but this is one of the more challenging activities I think the district goes through every year. I note, with some humor that what you presented us was version number 10, so I got to presume there are at least 9 others and probably more. So thank you for resolving all of this in a constructive and cooperative manner with, our feeder districts. Okay, the next item, before we go to that, I guess we have to take a vote, don't we? Any further comments or questions, board members? Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the 2015-16 calendar as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, Mrs. Barrett?
Mrs. Sorensen?
Yes.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Excuse me. Mr. Schreiber?
Aye.
Mr. Marcuson?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is approval of our press issue 85 and 86 policy updates. It says first reading, but I will ask later before we vote if people are willing to waive the first reading and go immediately to acceptance on the second reading. If anyone has an objection, we won't do that. For those who are not aware, PRESS is an acronym for a service that is provided by the Illinois Association of School Boards that on roughly a quarterly basis provides updates to district policy manuals based on new federal or state legislation, new administrative rules or guidelines, new court rulings, or just what's deemed to be best practice. And then each district, in this case Lake Forest High School Board of Education, gets to assess the applicability of those recommendations and vote whether to adopt them or not, or make modifications. So who is going to present these recommendations?
I will, and others can chime in as needed. So the press modifications, I recommend they be approved as presented. We have a combination of several that were adopted as presented, others with some edits, and then one was held off for future consideration. Typically on these changes, one of the really good services from the Illinois School Board Association are the policies. School boards in a lot of states have to do these on their own or pay really significantly to have this service done. And it really does, many of the changes are simply just changes to citations and whatnot. I recommend their approval as presented.
Board members, any questions on any of these recommendations? Ms. Sorensen, I think you raised a couple of issues in an email, maybe, as a for instance, but does anyone have any questions? Are you good on those issues now?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, great. Hearing none, then I would entertain a motion to waive first reading and immediately go to second reading and final approval.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, Mrs. Barrett?
Mr. Schreiber?
Aye.
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mrs. Sorensen?
Aye.
Mr. Marcuson? Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye. Okay, now I will entertain a motion then to finally adopt these recommended changes to our board policy manual.
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve press issue 85 and 86 policy updates, second reading as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Barrett?
Mr. Schreiber?
Aye.
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mrs. Sorensen? Aye. Mr. Marcuson? Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye. That then brings us to approval of the Human Resources report. Is that you, Mr. Simic, or
Yes,
Dr.
sir,
Wilcox?
and I recommend the Human Resources report be approved as presented.
Board members, any questions or comments on the Human Resources report? Looks like you're off the hook this time. Okay, I will entertain a motion then to approve the HR report as presented.
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the Human Resources report as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Mrs. Barrett?
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mr. Schreiber?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Marcuson?
Aye.
Mrs. Sorensen?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye. Where we approve a bevy of items as allowed by law. Any item can be removed from the consent agenda at the request of a board member. So if you have an issue with any of the minutes or disbursement report, et cetera, please feel free to raise your hand. Anybody have any issues with any item on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for approval.
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as published.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mrs. Barrett?
Mrs. Sorensen?
Aye.
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mr. Schreiber?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye. Thank you very much. The last item I would note prior to announcement is that we did receive 3 FOIA requests in the past month. Mr. Simic or Mr. Albus, is there anything of note in there that you would think beneficial for the public? They look reasonably routine to me. I'd just like to ask. I'd like the community to know that there is an ongoing flow of these things, and we are required by law to respond to them in a timely manner. As you can appreciate, it takes a fair amount of staff time. Some of these requests are quite voluminous in nature, and we deal with it, again, on a month-in, month-out basis. In terms of announcements, Wednesday, October 15th, tomorrow is National Testing Day. As Principal Rogers mentioned, we're giving school-wide ACT practice exams tomorrow, as well as, I don't remember whether you said plan or PSAT exam for sophomores, right? Wednesday, October 22nd is a late start day. School will begin at 9:30 a.m. Thursday, November 6th, always a popular day. No students, but parent-teacher conferences. I presume people can sign up for that online as they have in years past. This seems to have gotten smoother and smoother as the years have gone by. No school on Friday, November 7th. And then our next Board of Education meeting is currently scheduled for Tuesday, November 11th at 7 p.m. here in the West Campus Boardroom. I would let my fellow board members know that I will not be able to attend that meeting. I have to be out of town on business in Australia, and I'm sure Mr. Schreiber will do a fine job sitting in a chair. Which leads me also to feel I was remiss at the beginning of the meeting not to congratulate Dave for being unanimously elected Vice President, so congratulations. With that, unless board members have any other business, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Do I hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.